is in the middle. Checks back against Carter and scores. That is atypical for the Amina Margot.
Quickly gets it back again. Oh, what a goal! Well, that sums up her season. The Gunners are WSL champions.
Welcome back, everyone, to another Vic Akers Wonderland podcast. It's me, Adam Salter, back in the hosting seat once again, and I'm joined by one of my co-conspirators, the magnificent Matt in a hat. Matt, how are you doing?
I think coping is the best way I can describe it at the moment.
Yes. I think we're having to take extreme amounts of copium. It's been a rough week. Sadly, Lottie couldn't be with us tonight, but I am joined once again from his second appearance in the pod, flying in all the way from the blue half of London. Rob, welcome back, Rob, to the pod.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's great to be back and be discussing. I think probably I would personally say the biggest fixture I think in the WSL, the blockbuster fixture for me still. It's
definitely the game of the weekend, and I think you're right. It is probably one of the big games in the WSL. So we will get on to Arsenal versus Chelsea. A lot to discuss on that one. But there were a few games that happened midweek. And we will start with the blue half of London, as you are here, Rob, and get your views on Real Madrid 2, Chelsea 3 at Stamford Bridge. So you have 3-2 to Chelsea, Stamford Bridge. A bit wet. I got the impression from the stream. Were you there for that one?
I was indeed. I was at a very wet Stamford Bridge.
So I was watching this on the stream on DAZN. What was it like for you there? Because from a sound perspective, anyway, I know the group stages don't generate the big crowds maybe we'd want, but what was it like for you in the stadium?
The atmosphere wasn't bad. I think the issue that Chelsea have is that Stamford Bridge is obviously big, and the fact that everyone's packed into one stand, I don't think it necessarily helps with the acoustics. I think it'd be much better personally if they were to have group games at Kingsmeadow, because I think when Kingsmeadow really gets rocking, and especially under the lights, you get a really good atmosphere in there. I'm sure you've been to times at Kingsmeadow where the noise can really get generated due to the fact that it's quite a tight and compact ground. Similar to in Meadow Park on similar nights, the fact that it's quite a tight and compact ground, it helps with the acoustics. But it was a very strange game because although it finished 3-2, I said to someone, it's the most boring 3-2 I've watched in a long time. Because Chelsea scored after a couple of minutes and then nothing happened. And then Chelsea got a penalty and then nothing happened. And then Real Madrid scored and then nothing happened. Then it was half time. Then half time happened and Chelsea scored again. And then nothing happened, and then Real Madrid scored, and then nothing happened.
But that's exactly my feel. I was sort of, I don't think bored exactly, but I had it on, and then it'd be like, oh, there's been something's happened, and then like when Real Madrid got their second goal, and you're thinking, right, big grandstand finish, really crank up the pressure. Nothing happened. It was really, 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 really bizarre. Now, this is obviously Sonja Bompastor's first European game as Chelsea manager. Her previous European game was also against Spanish opposition in very different circumstances. In this instance, though, how do you feel Chelsea did? Was that a good performance or not, especially going into a game like this?
I think it was decent enough. Ultimately, I'm rich of the view in the Champions League, win your home games, draw your away games, and win one of your away games, you will probably top the group. Chelsea last year away at Real Madrid on the opening day, in rather acrimonious circumstances, only drew 2-2, thanks to some questionable officiating, I think it's fair to say. So, ultimately, Chelsea can only beat what's in front of them. Was it a vintage performance? No. Do I think the weather, contributed to that? Absolutely. Do I also think, the fact there was a bug in the camp earlier in the week played a part in it? The fact that Chelsea hadn't played for, over a week due to the fact they'd been on the road on the Friday night fixture the week before played a part in it, as obviously, we'll discuss a bit later. But yeah, ultimately winning 3-2, getting the win on the board, 3 different goal scorers. When Chelsea, the thing I think all the way through was also Chelsea felt like they had another gear they could find if they really needed to.
It didn't feel like they were at full whack, but I would be honest, neither did Real Madrid.
Of course. It felt a very strange game.
So it's Real Madrid, and in your group it's Celtic as well, and who's the other team in the
Twente.
FC Twente? So you'd think now you would probably top the group after that result.
Yeah, I mean, I think the benefit for Chelsea now is that they know if they go into their other games, they've got Twente away next, then they've got the double header against Celtic, then Twente at home, and then Real Madrid away. They know by the time they get into that Madrid away game, as long as they do the business every other game, Madrid are going to need to come out and attack at home.
Yep.
And I think Chelsea will be quite happy doing that away from home, because I think, away from home they can set up the counter. And Real Madrid, if they, even if they also they now know that they can't afford any slip ups against, say, Twente away from home or Celtic away from home, which I don't think will be easy games for anyone, in all honesty. Otherwise, they won't top the group. And to be honest, I'm also of the view that topping the group in the Women's Champions League was less impactful than doing it in the men's one, because I think every team that goes through in the Women's Champions League by that point will be a decent team due to the way the competition works.
You just don't want to draw Barcelona at that stage. You want to get them later on in the competition, basically.
No, exactly. Well, not necessarily Barcelona. I mean, I personally think that every one of the teams, I think, will finish in the top two in all of the different groups. I did this on a preview show the other day. Everyone that finishes in the top two, with maybe an exception of one or two, will be thinking about that point, right, we can go on and win this competition.
Yeah.
And I think it's it's quite interesting in the way it's that it's in the sort of, compared to the men's one, where you sort of look at it and you're like, well, it's going to be X or Y or Z, and it's always the same 3 or 4 teams.
There's no dead certs.
Exactly. One. I think there's lots of teams that can win it.
When you're trying to sort of plan it, you could also look at it another way, is effectively when you're looking at those top two, essentially if all 3 teams go through, either top or bottom, potentially that reduces the sort of ties you can play as well. So that's going to be an interesting one to keep an eye out on, should all 3 qualify as well.
Oh, all 3 English teams.
Yes.
Yeah, because you can't have 2 English teams at the quarters, can you? Or can you?
No, you can't play anyone from the same league as you until the semi-finals, which essentially 2 years ago, when we faced Wolfsburg and Chelsea played
Lyon, was it?
Leon, yes.
Or
we had the split one, but essentially it could have been an Arsenal-Chelsea Champions League final.
Yeah. Well, whilst Chelsea did rather well against Real Madrid, Arsenal less so. So we'll get right into it. Bayern Munich 5, Arsenal 2. Goals from Vigosdottir, Lohmann, and 3 from a certain Pernilla Harder. We'll get back to her in a bit. Whilst 2 goals for the Arsenal, one from Mariona Caldente and another from Lai Kadina. Just going to throw some stats at this one. So it's the first time Arsenal have conceded 5 goals in any competitive match since 2017. Just quickly, who was that against? Any pointers? Man City. Yes, it was in 2017. It was one of Pedro's last games in charge. This is the 4th time this century Arsenal have conceded 5 goals in a competitive match. Man City being 1. Obviously this game, and 2 under Vic Akers, both in the Champions League actually as well, against Umeå in 2008 and Fortuna Hjørring, I believe I pronounced that correctly. I do apologise, I haven't, in 2002. So those are the kind of numbers we're dealing with. And not good ones. My feeling was, and I'll get yours in a minute, Matt, but I thought for the first half an hour, we actually looked okay. And then for the next half an hour, Bayern Munich looked like they had a hand on the game, which I expected. They were at home, so expecting to be a stronger side. And then what happened in the last 30 minutes was pretty much inexcusable.
Yeah, it was a really weird game, to be honest, because you look at it, the first couple of minutes causing a lot of Casey McCabe causing a lot of chaos with the crossing. She finally gets the assist in that first half with a great finish from Mariona on the volley. Fantastic finish on that. It's just, and then towards that end of the half, you're looking right. Okay, try and see it out. Make sure you don't do anything silly. And Vigosdottir goes and scores a header, and who's marking that? Stina Blackstenius. It's just very questionable defending. It's just like, why is your striker defending that sort of situation?
I think there'd been a corner that we cleared, and it was second delivery, and nobody was properly set. This became a running theme in the second half. We get to. Yeah, 1-1 at half time. And I thought, you know what, after what we'd had to deal with at Everton, I was happy with that performance, but I knew that in the last, let's say, 10, 15 minutes, well, I lost concentration for about a good 10, 15 minutes because of obviously, well, what was seen online with the stream and the sound and the confusion. And at one point we were hearing the heavy breathing of Michael McCann, which was a bit odd. But the problem was, is because that was so distracting, I was struggling to follow the game. By the time it all corrects itself, Bayern were in complete control. They ran the last 10 minutes or so of the game. I don't know why Arsenal just sort of stopped, maybe Bayern up the intensity a bit, but it did look like that, having taken the lead and a well-warranted lead, we just lost all presence in the game. But I still thought at half-time, you know what, 1-1, not a bad result. As you were saying, Rob, draw your away games, you're laughing. And if you go away with Bayern Munich, with a 1-1 draw, we can go back to London and then think, excellent, that was a good Harmorden point, tricky place to go, we had a good showing. The second half happened and all that flew out the window because, quite frankly, the second half, Arsenal just didn't turn up. And I'd say it started bad and got worse from there. The second of the Lohman goal, it's a really good goal from Bayern. The speed of the counter was really good. But yeah, what happened? Where was the defence?
It is very questionable because it just, as you mentioned, Bayern have essentially just dominated because I think it was opening shot within about 40 odd seconds.
Yeah.
And it just kept on coming. And I was thinking, right, okay, either you're going to have to make some changes or you're going to have to weather the storm. And he chose to weather the storm. And just, unfortunately, Sydney Lohman was in the right place at the right time and she goes and scores.
Questions on Manu? Maybe she was being at a near post, or is that a case of the power of the shot is just too good for her? Because it was a good shot, but I thought she was going to take across the keeper, and I'm wondering maybe if Manu was trying to anticipate that. It didn't look good. It looked like she was too far from her near post on that particular goal.
It's one where I think it's the speed of the delivery, the speed of the shot that's fooled her, because it's essentially it's a cross, and she's expecting someone to try and block the shot. And because she hasn't blocked the shot, she's not ready. She's not set. She can't make that move. Every time things like that happen, I think there was a couple of goals in that half as well, especially when we go further on, where the shot comes in, but there's not enough of a reaction time. It's like a point of a second where you have to react, and sometimes that's not enough time to react to get on the end and save them sorts of shots.
From that goal from Lohman, I thought that Bayern were, and they did obviously in the end, but at that point they were going to run away. But there were a lot of efforts on our goal. It felt very under siege. Bayern is making some great saves, but we get one attack forward. We win a set piece. We know what our record is like at set pieces, even with our new set piece coach. Surprise of surprises, we actually score a goal against the run of play, but I was take it. And at that point, I'm thinking, right, you've saved yourself. It's 2-2. Lock the game down, right? It's clear that Bayern got the advantage. You've mugged a goal. It's 2-2. Great header from Kodner. Jonas makes some subs, Matt. Were these the correct subs?
I think there was a case of he could have held on for a couple more minutes. Because
I'll say with somebody, he was prepping them before the goal. I think these were lined up before we actually got the
idea would have been that you've scored a goal, give it a few more minutes before you make those changes, because that then causes more chaos. Because the team's reacted, you want to see how they react for the next couple of minutes. Because if it swings again, you go, right, okay, they need to come back. They need to cut it off. I think that's what gave Bayern the upper hand, was that those changes were instant, and then the momentum swung back towards Bayern again.
I mean, the manner. I mean, the manner of the collapse was from my eyes criminal. I know we're going to get onto Jonas and where he is right now with his Arsenal team, but from what I've seen since he took over from Joe Montemurro, I mean, this was almost, I don't say Montemurro-esque, but I got so used to Joe Montemurro with an Arsenal team going away from home and getting battered. And the one I can compare it to, and Rob, you will know this one, is the lockdown 3-0 away at Chelsea, when they just pulled away, and a certain Pernilla Harder, I think, scored 2 goals that day. We're going to get on to Harder, because the second half, the way that the team just folded. I mean, even if we lost 3-2, I'd have gone, you know what, great game, we lost 3-2, move on. You don't concede 5 goals, and certainly not 4 in one half. I mean, Rob, I'll give you free rein. You know this striker better than anybody else. But the hat trick, and what was it, like 15 minutes or 17 minutes? Something, the speed at which he just tore Arsenal to shreds with just how did that happen?
13 minutes, and I think the biggest compliment I can place Pinella. I try not to wax lyrical overly about individual players. I tend to reserve that for a very special breed of player that are ones that are just that so good to watch, not just so effective, but just amazing to watch. The thing I can quite happily say is every single time Pinella Harder stepped onto a pitch in a Chelsea shirt, she was just everything she did just oozes class and quality and looks effortless. And it's players like that I think are really, really, really special footballers. You treasure them when they're around, and inevitably you miss them once they've left. I think my biggest concern with Arsenal is the two Harder goals. The first two of them were pretty much identical.
Yes.
It was the same area, the same header, and I will say, like Harder, when she was in England, one of the things that surprised me about Pinella Harder was how good she was in the air. I can remember a few games where there were a couple of headers were spectacular headers, but she's so good in that, I'd say, that spot from maybe between just behind the penalty spot to that area just on the 6-yard box where she just hovers, and she has that innate ability to hover and get away from a defender. And I do have to say, on Zinsberger, I've seen a lot of people criticising her for those two goals. I can't believe you can criticise her for those two headers at that close a range.
No,
personally, I do think she should have done better with the Lerman goal.
Yes.
I do think, a top goalkeeper, in all honesty, doesn't get beaten like that at the near post. And it reminded me a little bit of when Chelsea, I think, scored the Canarad goal, as we said last year at the Emirates, where she was caught out at the near post again. Yeah. It reminded me of that. But those two, I don't think, what really also I thought surprised me was the lack of impetus in closing down the cross. It's as if they had time to pick out Pinella Harder. And if you give, a decent team like Bayern, because being fair to Arsenal, Bayern are a very tough draw. You've got a team that I think are beaten at home for over a calendar year.
I mean, they're beaten in the league so far this season. They haven't lost at all. I mean, they're the won the league last 2 seasons.
I think it's 15 months since they've lost at home, and also they had a poor performance last year in the Champions League, especially at home. They're determined to rectify that, and they've got more players fit again. So I don't think necessarily losing the game was a bad thing. I think it is, as you said, the nature of how it sort of collapsed, and the fact that as soon as it went to 3-2 Bayern Munich, you felt, and I sort of felt this as a complete neutral watcher, that it was a matter of how many Bayern scored before the end, rather than whether Arsenal got back into it. And that, I think, is the biggest concern.
Yeah, I had no confidence that we were going to get back into it again, because the fact that at the second, the equaliser we got was so against the run of play. It was, it was almost... I knew we were not going to get that lucky again. The first 2 Harder goals, we just say, the first one's a corner. Now it's actually, she heads it from quite far out because she's not in the 6-yard box. It actually goes almost over the entire defence. The fact that she's able to get the header on and it goes past so many players into the net. For me, I mean, I'm always one of these have players on posts. I know it's not the done thing anymore, but I just think if you had someone on the post, it would have been blocked. And then the second one, it's actually another corner we defend, but as you were saying earlier, Matt, with the first goal, it's the second ball in, and it's whipped in. It's a good delivery, great header from Harder, close range. I mean, the pain of the goals, and obviously the hat trick one was. I don't want to blame Manu for this. She's done her best to make the save, but Harder's on top of her like a. Manu's like a gazelle being pounced on by a lion. It's just Harder's there just to force the thing over the line. It's
when
a hat
that
trick.
Hits though, it's literally hit. She has no idea where it's gone. So that's where you need your defence to help you out. And unfortunately, the reaction is too slow and Harder.
Can I also, with that goal, can I also say, if you watch that back for anyone who's watching who might be a young striker or wants to watch it, as soon as Harder heads it, has the first connection onto it, she's anticipating that it's getting spilled, and she takes those 2 extra steps forward, and that allows her to bundle it in. And that is one of those things I think that separates a good striker from a top striker, because there are plenty of players that with that would have assumed the first one's going in and then not followed it in and let the keeper gather it back in. And I don't think it's a Zinsberger mistake, to be honest. I think from that sort of range, you can't expect us to do anything. What I will say, it was impressive how well Bayern moved the ball for the goal. But again, Arsenal sort of invited them. Like by that point, it sort of felt like they'd sort of given up, and it was, quick, incisive passing again from Bayern. But no one was even just, put a foul in and just take the player out before the initial ball, comes in. Because it's so, it kind of was so lifeless and lackluster. I think it was it Ball in the end who puts the cross in for
I think
it?
so. It was one of those. I remember watching the move, and I remember watching thinking they're going to score. I knew they were going to score before it got to hard. The way when it came out wide, and I just saw that the numbers, the defense didn't look right. You saw harder in the box. You thought if that cross is coming into the 6-yard box, it's all over. And I'm not sure what was more painful: the fact they scored 5 goals, but also after every goal, you had the Bayern Munich celebration music. Hearing the can and all the other songs. Just I know we have Freed for Desire at Emirates Stadium, but this was, and I know that obviously with Bayern Munich, this is obviously a tradition. They do this with the men's team as well, but it just sort of amplified every time. It was just like, yes, it's another one. And I think it got beyond that line from a defeat to this is embarrassing now. This is really bad. And it could have probably been more. And we're probably lucky it was only the 5, but it was a very, very, very bad night in the end, and it's a shame because, as you were saying, for 60 minutes or so, if you ended the game then, we would have gone fine. We'll walk away from that and be quite respectable.
I think a point would have been a really good result, in all honesty.
And it's a shame really because we played them. We played them last year. When you actually think about it, we played this team last year and we only lost 1-0, and then we won 2-0 in the Emirates Stadium, and that was last year, but 2 seasons ago, and. Flash forward, the gulf could not be further apart, and it was it's very disappointing to watch. And we'd hope that with Jonas, we know he likes the big games, teams that will give him space to allow his team to play in and do the high press. And this is what happens. But at least we haven't got a big game at the weekend. Oh, wait, we do. Oh, no. Right. Yes. So Chelsea. Yes. Next up on the list. Things couldn't get any worse. Rob, I'll come to you first in this one. So much to talk about with Chelsea. Firstly, last season. We have to talk about last season because I think that's probably the greatest title race since I'd say 2014. Back then, 3 teams were in contention on the final day, and it ended up going to goal difference. And that's since Liverpool won. This one, slightly different, but I would say until the closing minutes of the second to last game of the season, Chelsea were not in the driving seat and had a considerably worse goal difference. I think I quite seeing you message saying about this. I think it was when there was an earlier game in the season. I think the keeper had handled the ball. The opposition had done something stupid.
Villa at home.
And I think you said that was the moment to really crack into the goal difference, and Chelsea hadn't really done that. And then the Man City game at home, away for us comes around. Man City go 1-0 up. It's 89 minutes. At that point, obviously, you've got Bristol City just around the corner at home. Have you written off the title?
It's quite funny you said, because I actually was on the way to Kingsmeadow at the time, and I'd written it off. I was like, right, I'd seen City gone well. I was like, right, well, that's fine. We'll go away. We'll, say goodbye to Emma. There's still an incredible, amount of achievement that's been done. We also knew it was going to be Frank Kirby's final game at Kingsmeadow. It was, very, very special moment for a lot of long-term service. Marami Elder as well. You were saying goodbye to players that, for me, typified a generation, for me, of supporting Chelsea women. And so when I'm actually on the train, I see it go to 1-1. And then I actually lost Wi-Fi on my device in my carriage. And from someone a couple of carriages down, I hear someone screaming yes. And I'm not sure what in relation this was, because there was also a Super Sunday game on at the same time. And I was thinking to them, it's probably from that. And then I recover from it, and it's just showing Arsenal with possession, I think, in the middle of the field. And then it cuts to it, and it cuts back, and I suddenly just see Black Stadium celebrating again. And I have to scroll back, and I'm checking on my phone to make sure I haven't accidentally scrolled back and I'm watching the first goal again.
Yeah, I know.
I realise, no, it says 2-1. Then have a very nervous few minutes where, I'm basically don't score. And then it gets to Kingsmeadow, and at half-time at Kingsmeadow, it's kind of all for naught, because it was only 2-0, and quite frankly, Chelsea played awful in the second half. But I think the big catalyst was the fact Aggie Beaver-Jones scores about the 50th minute. And she's being Chelsea through and through. She goes and grabs the ball and is instantly like, right, we've got to get the goal difference eroded. And I think probably the defining image of that game for me is after Guro Wrighton scored a hat-trick goal, rather than celebrate that, she goes and collects the ball and she just mouths sorry to the goalkeeper because she wanted to go and score again and she knew they needed to get the goal difference down. And I think as soon as they got that goal difference down, it was that moment that night, I think, was when Chelsea won the title. Because I could see them, I thought they were going to go away to Spurs and, by hook or by crook, dragged a 1-0 win out of it. And United at Old Trafford, I think they'd already won the FA Cup the week beforehand. I think that was effectively their season over. And Chelsea scored early on, then massacred.
What was the goal? What was it? Was it 8-0 at Bristol City against? Was it
8-0? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we got 11-1, but even so, that's that's bonkers, and that should not be happening at the WSL. Yeah. I did want to just wind that back though, because obviously the only reason it ended up in this pickle was what I say is one of the greatest ever games to ever play in the WSL, up there with if a Premier League equivalent would be Liverpool Newcastle. The game at Liverpool, with Gemma Bonner, with a late corner, and Emma Hayes slumped to the dugout, Kevin Keegan style. I mean, just as a Chelsea fan watching that game, what was that like?
I'll be honest, it was one of those afters. I was like, if we lose the title from that, I can't complain, because it wasn't. I'm a bit of a realist. I'm very fair. If I feel like a referee has impacted the result, I will say it. If I feel like there's X, I'll say it. But on that day, you can't concede 3 goals from set pieces in one single game and expect to win a game. You can't concede 3 identical goals from set pieces. Well, exactly my point. You can't do that and then expect to win the game. And I felt sorry that night. And I remember the defining feeling for that. I was feeling sorry for Aggie Beaver-Jones, because I remember her having, one of the best performances I've seen in the Chelsea shirt all of last season, and not coming out on the winning side. I think she hit the bar. She scored twice. She had a chance for a hat-trick. I think she sat at Macario as well. She was just unplayable. And I remember thinking, well, if nothing else, we've come out of this knowing that, if Sam Kerr doesn't get fit for the beginning of the new season, and, Ramirez continues to be injured, at least we've got a bloody good option up front in Beaver-Jones, which I think we did already know that. But I think that's the game that really cemented it for me and said, right, well, she's now ready to start in a regular basis in pressure situations. But we always struggle away at Liverpool. I mean, it was the season before, again, we lost the winning run at Liverpool with those 2 penalties. Yeah, I think Chelsea, especially Matt Beard, he was very, very good at playing against Emma Hayes, because he knew Hayes' sides wanted, if they went 1-0 up, they wanted to try and go and get the second and the third and fourth. And he was very, very good if a team went 1-0 up against them at just making the game boring and slowing it down and waiting for a chance to get back into it. And I think Matt Beard is a phenomenal coach. I think he's probably one of the best in terms of ability to use resources and get the most out of resources. I think he's probably one of the best, if not the best, in the WSL.
I think he's very underrated. I mean, we should remember he won 2 league titles with Liverpool. Did have a spell at Chelsea as well. One of the best games I could ever watch. And I thought after that game, that was it. That was the moment. It was Man City were on that run of form. But as we all know, Man City, come the end of the season, they have a wobble. They do a stupid result. And I mean, what happened at Old Trafford was just crazy, because I know Man United had an FA Cup hangover, but there's no way. Was it 6-0 in the end? Was it at Old Trafford?
6-0, yeah.
Bonkers. I was at the at Meadow Park for, I think, we were Brighton. I think that went 5-0 in the end. Miedemar's last game, and we're thinking, we might be, you never know, 2 teams, same point, different goal difference. It could be interesting. I'm looking at our phones. After 5 minutes, Chelsea 2-0 up or something. Look at this, ridiculous.
It was one of those. It was just nuts in the stadium, because Chelsea went 1-0 up, and I was at Old Trafford, and then they go 2-0, and you hear that Manchester City have gone 1-0 up. You're sort of like, that's fine. And Myra Ramirez then proceeds to just go and absolutely obliterate Millie Turner for about 40. I think Millie Turner's probably still having nightmares of seeing her bearing down on her and I can completely understand it. I would not want her bearing down at you, because she's the way I describe it is she's like a technical freight train. She's a really, really good technical footballer, but also she just comes powering at you. And if you either get out of the way or you just get knocked over. And I think it was I think it's the 4th goal where Hannah Blundell just takes one look at her coming through and thinks, I don't fancy that at 3-0 down.
She's a bit of as a physical unit, great aerially. She's a bit of a Bunny Shaw sort of striker. She's very much exactly, a unit.
The way I give this huge praise, because I really love Bunny Shaw. She's a bit of a faster Bunny Shaw, is the way of it. Not necessarily as good a finisher as Bunny Shaw, because I think Shaw's finishing, and again, you saw it against Barcelona the other day. It's reached a whole new level of being technically brilliant, as well as being able to power shot time. She's so good from a technical point of view. I think Ramirez can get to that level, and that's what I want to see from Ramirez more and more. But it was then quite funny, because the second half then just became one great party in the away end, and getting to do that at Old Trafford. I made sure at the very end to get my phone out and take a photo of Chelsea 6, Manchester United 0 at Old Trafford, because you don't get many chances to get that photo. Mary Earps obviously was really, really rattled at having England's number 2 sang at her for the second half.
And I think she's England's number 2 now as well.
Yeah,
I think
precisely. And then Fran Kirby. If there was a way, I think you could have asked a Chelsea fan to like sign off the Emma Hayes era. I think Fran Kirby scoring in the end a meaningless goal in the game, but making it 6-0 at the home of one of your great rivals to sign it off. I think that was, and also Sophie Ingle getting the assist as the player who was there at the beginning of the Hayes reign and was there at the end of the Hayes reign, and she had some spells elsewhere in between, but we'll forgive her. And having such a longevity in the WSL, and obviously really disappointing not to see her this season due to her ACL injury. I think it was a really nice way to end it. But obviously, I think Chelsea fans earned that through the frustration of the FA Cup game, Barcelona cheating at Stamford Bridge. And I will use the phrase cheating in all honesty.
It was Barcelona, a bit,
Barcelona fans give me enough abuse on social media anyway for that game.
Well,
so what's some more?
They got their comeuppance against Manchester City midweek,
precisely.
So we'll move away from that. And obviously the other one was obviously the League Cup final, which obviously the last time we played each other, and that was a very for Arsenal fans, it was a very emotional day. Obviously with what happened with Frida on the pitch, and sort of they had extra time, and the way it went to the last few minutes, and it was obviously Stina who won it for us. Very different landscape in football now, not least that Emma Hayes is no longer at Chelsea. She has gone to the States and already won her first bit of silverware or goldware. She won a gold medal with the United States. Congratulations to them. But you have a new manager in Sonja Bompastor, the worst kept secret of the summer. As much as people try to otherwise, we all knew that she was going to come in to be the Chelsea manager. I saw her in the Champions League final for Lyon. Obviously, Barcelona won that one, but her record speaks for herself. She's won the Champions League already with Lyon and won league titles. Lyon is like the Barcelona of France. They print trophies there, quite frankly. So I can understand it being a wise appointment. And so far, was it 2 league games, 2 wins, a win in the Champions League? It's all going rather well, isn't it, so far under Sonja?
Yeah, I mean, you can only beat what's in front of you, and I think so far Chelsea have done that. I think they are games you would have expected Chelsea to win, in all honesty. But I think Villa at home, Villa actually look a very, very good side this year, and they certainly look like the sort of side that are going to cause teams problems. Joanna Wright and Canary scored a very, very good goal and settled that contest. And I think against Crystal Palace, after Palace put up stalwart defending for about 30 minutes, Chelsea got a goal, got a second early in the second half, and I think we saw what we know can happen in the WSL. The floodgates just open. Chelsea did play some really nice football towards the end of that game, albeit you've got to put it into context that I think, in being brutally honest, Palace are going to be no higher than 10th this season. Being brutally honest, but only beat what's in front of you. Again, obviously, the game against Manchester United that was called off. That I think we. All round was probably a shambles on everyone's part for the league.
I mean, can we
UEFA?
Just go on that? I mean, how on earth did that happen? How on earth can it be that it's like last season, Arsenal fans, we had a game against Everton, and it was at the last minute people realised, we can't broadcast it. It was on the wrong day, and it was all a bit embarrassing. But this was something else. It's just like, what was it? Was it going to be? It was going to be broadcast on the Sunday or played on the Sunday, and then you had Real Madrid on the Tuesday. Yeah. And nobody had clocked that shouldn't happen. I mean, how?
So from what I understand, and I'll give both stances to it. I'll give what I understand and also the Chelsea stance. I'll start with the Chelsea stance. Chelsea's view is that they were requested to play on the Sunday in that slot, and they were under the understanding that they would be given the Wednesday Champions League slot because Arsenal not being on telly meant that they could be on the Saturday. However, someone obviously didn't realise that Arsenal are playing in the Premier League on the Saturday at the Emirates and then playing in the Emirates on the Sunday, so can't, move this. So that was Chelsea's sort of point of view on it. The other thing they maintain is that they claim they asked United if they would play with them on a Saturday and play Saturday lunchtime, and United said no, because I don't know exactly why. If I think they had a Conti Cup game on the previous Wednesday, so they said that was too short a turnaround for them, which I can understand. The general sort of consensus from what I, have gleaned together from various parties is that the league thought the Champions League were going to change their schedule to adjust it for English teams, and
that's woefully naive.
Why on earth they think that? But also that they thought maybe that if they moved the Chelsea game earlier in the day it was going to be a suitable suggestion. I heard an idea they wanted to have it played behind closed doors on the Saturday evening. It was all, a bit of a mess, in all honesty. And I think, no one comes out of it very well. It's damaging for, Newco effectively because, the first big sort of shambles of their reign. And
didn't take long.
Yeah, well, precisely. I don't think it fills fans with a lot of hope. And I think there's a similar situation I think it has been rectified already, but Arsenal play Brighton, I think. And that's been moved to the Friday night because of Champions League the week before. But I think Brighton then play in the Conti Cup on the Tuesday that week. So they're then being, hamstrung. And that's obviously not Arsenal's fault. I want to make this very, very clear.
No.
There was a lot of silly tribalism on social media from a lot of fans saying, Chelsea have requested this, is Chelsea's fault. I can assure you for a fact, Chelsea, Arsenal, City, United, whoever, do not get to pick when they're playing or when they're being broadcast. It's all up to the broadcasters. And that is the whole thing that dictates the schedule. And that is another thing, I could go on my own tangent and rant about this I had before in an article. But to me, it is a real shame that the fans sort of are about the 12th priority on the list when it comes to actually making games accessible and putting games on at a good time to get a good crowd in. And, I appreciate Champions League, obviously, you've got to do it in the evening because of the nature of the Champions League. But at weekends, I can't understand why more can't be done to have fixtures at accessible times and also coordinate with, say, train companies or bus companies or whatever in order to mean that fans aren't jumping through loads of hoops to try and attend games, especially away from home.
Absolutely. I mean, Jonas was asked why Jonas, it's not his game, but Jonas was asked about this extensively in one of his press conferences. I think it was the previous week, and he pretty much laid the blame squarely at it's known as the WPLL or WSL, whatever that collective is known as now.
The new code, as I'm referring to.
Yeah, it is a bit embarrassing, and like I said, I think we've explained this before. We try to say the WSL is the best league in the world and most competitive league, and it's where all the players want to go, and then this sort of nonsense happens, and it's a bit embarrassing. We will move on to something a bit more to talk about, with some of the players. And one player I do want to talk about because I think she's become a bit of a star this season. Was always one player that rises to becomes the bigger player. I think of players like Guro Reiten had a monster season a few seasons back. Sam Kerr, Frank Kirby. I think this season looks like it's going to be Ritten Kaneryd. By all the noises I'm hearing is that she's having a bit of a stormer. Now, she scored against us at Emirates Stadium. You mentioned it earlier. What can Arsenal expect from her when she rocks up again this time around?
Yeah, so I mean, I've lovingly christened her this year Joanna Graham Hansen because of the way she's playing at this moment in time. And I consider that the ultimate sort of compliment for how well I consider Graham Hansen to be the best winger. Best right winger in the world, arguably the best attacker in the world, just because of how consistent she is, both with her end product, but also with her quality. And I think, with Kaneryd, the first year she was at Chelsea, she admitted she really struggled to settle. She was struggling with being in and out of the team. She struggled with injuries. It was a difficult first year. And then I think last summer when Katarina Macario arrived, everyone thought, well, right, that's it. Macario's going into the 10, James off the right and off the left, and Kaneryd might be leaving the club. And it was very, very strange. There's one particular game I point out, and I did an article on this a few weeks ago, so I won't go too much into it. But there was a game against Brighton last year where she was subbed on at half time, and Chelsea were 1-1 against Brighton. And you could tell the instruction was just run at the fullback, run at the fullback, run at the fullback. And you sort of saw the confidence just return in that game. She got an assist in that second half, I believe, for Serkan Nuskan. And the next game against Aston Villa, she goes ahead, she pinches the ball on the halfway line, runs all the way through, bangs it into the top corner. And you just saw the confidence return to the player. She was arguably our only decent performer last year in the 4-1 at the Emirates. She then got an assist next time out against Liverpool and tormented the fullback. And what I love about Ritten Kaneryd is she's a very traditional winger. It's just go at the fullback and beat the fullback. And, she's adopted the old Ronaldo chop as the JRK chop, which, despite the fact she does it every single game, still manages to beat defenders. The other day it was Olga Carmona who, had a taste of the dirt at Stamford Bridge as she cut back inside and clipped it in for Nuskan to head it in. And she's adding more goals to her game. Obviously, she got that second goal at Old Trafford. She did score, I think, against Leicester as well from a decent move. And it's obviously got that really good strike. And this year, more excitingly, rather than just previously being right-footed, she's now discovered she has a left foot as well. And it's quite good. And she's actually starting to become a two-footed winger. which is a really, and as you will know, that's a really terrifying prospect for any fullback, because if you know they can only go one side, you can focus on sending the other side. But when they're like a Graham Hansen, and Graham Hansen can beat you on the outside and whip a crossing, or can just cut inside and whip the left-footed strike into the top corner, as she did a few years ago at Stamford Bridge, it becomes really hard to defend against. And it'd be really interesting. I think she'll be up against McCabe most likely.
Is she right wing or left wing?
Right wing.
Right wing. So so it'll be McCabe or Steph Catley. I
think they'll probably go for McCabe, because she was up against, I think, Steph Catley at Stamford Bridge in March, and she tore Steph Catley to bits.
Her and Lauren James. I did a very, very long rant on this pod after that Stamford Bridge game, basically going through every goal, because all 3 goals were utterly shambolic. It was really embarrassing, some of the things that were happening and weren't happening. And Steph Catley was there, culpable for that as well. I think Katie McCabe was in around there as well. I mean, last time we played Emirates Stadium, I think it was McCabe Catley was on the left, and I think it was Catley, Brighton Canary took the ball through her legs to get the goal, and we had McCabe on the right, which was the wrong side for her, but she did a number, shall we say, on Lauren James, and pretty much took her out of the game, and she had no impact at all. My opinion is, certainly in that last season, was if you were able to disable Lauren James, because she's such a talent, but if you can quieten her, you massively impact the rest of the Chelsea team, and that's how that sort of game panned out. So this time around, I don't know. Fox will probably be playing. We'll get onto the Arsenal team predictions in a bit. But it sounds like you've got another danger winger. And if that works well for Chelsea, because it means that all the focus is on Lauren James, and it means suddenly you've got 2 threats. You can't,
this was it. The Real Madrid's issue they had the other day was that James in the 10, they tried to sort of stick a couple of players on her in the first half and negate her, and also tried to do the same with Wrighton. And it just left every single time she ended up one-on-one with Olga Carmona. And Carmona is a very, very good attacking fullback, but I think she really struggles in the defensive phase. And every single time Canary was just going past her. And I think now she's got the confidence up. She's at that point where she believes she can beat anyone. And that's always, I think, the most dangerous. When you're a defender, that's the most dangerous kind of winger to come up against, when they've got no idea of fearing you. I think, as a winger, as a defender, you want to be looking at that winger and thinking, right, I've got you locked down, you're going nowhere. Whereas it's a bit like with Saka on the men's side at the moment. I think Saka's looking at every fullback and thinking, right, I've got your number here. Or Cole Palmer, I think, for Chelsea, is looking at you and thinking, right, I've got your number here, I'm going past you, you aren't stopping me. And being in that level of confidence, I think, is quite something for a player.
One player that you have signed, quite high-profile signing, Lucy Bronze. As a Lioness, obviously, a lot of fans, but I also know that there are people who maybe questioned that signing. Very experienced with WSL, obviously, spent time at Manchester City, and I think maybe at Liverpool as well. I think she maybe had a spell then. How is she? Because I think she scored against Crystal Palace, if I remember correctly. So how has she sort of settled in within the team? Is she that difference between getting that Champions League, because she's won it a few times? She's got that experience.
I think the experience is good. I will say, I do think that against the better teams, Bronze still struggles defensively. I think you can get away with it against the likes of Crystal Palace, because Bronze can effectively play as a right midfielder, right winger for a lot of that game, and spent more of the time whipping in bolts into the box. The other games, Real Madrid, the first goal especially, it came from Bronze overcomplicating it, not just clearing the ball and trying to take on the winger, being dispossessed, and then Captain also won it back and then gave it away, and Bronze couldn't get back in and didn't have the speed to get back in. So I personally do think tomorrow at the Emirates, I think they might choose to go for Ed Perisset because of her form and record against Arsenal, or maybe Ashley Lawrence. Again, if they do that, I'm not really sure who they'll play at left back, because I don't think we Sandy Baltimore again. But I do think that, I think Bronze is doing okay so far. Ultimately, very experienced head. Can't be a bad thing in a Chelsea side that, in the last couple of years has lost Jisoo Yun, has lost Magda Eriksson, has lost Mara Mielda, has lost Fran Kirby, has lost Jess Carter, has lost Anne-Katrin Berger. That's a lot of big game experience. And obviously, Sonja knows her from her time at Olympique Lyonnais. She's been at, a lot of the top clubs around the world. She is a European champion. There's very little that's going to phase Lucy Bronze. But I do think that, in the more games where Chelsea are going to come against more technical, quicker wingers, I think they might go for a more defensive sort of option.
Well, we are going to move on to it. This obviously is an Arsenal pod, and we will talk about Arsenal. But before we close out on the Chelsea one, I just wanted to get an idea of what your team prediction will be for the game. Now, you said there was a sickness bug that was in the camp. Has that been dispersed?
I'm delighted to say that that's now all sorted. Again,
Great.
it was
So
Real Madrid that benefited from that, but everyone is fit again.
So Hannah Hampton will be back in for this one.
Yeah, so if I was to guess, it looks something like Hampton, Perisset, Bright, Buchanan, Lawrence, Nuskin, Cuthbert, Joanna Eaton-Canarud, Lauren James, and Guro Wrighton, and then I think they might go for Aggie Beaver-Jones up front over Myra Ramirez, just to rest Ramirez and because she's played a lot in the last couple of weeks. And Beaver-Jones has also played very well leading the line against Crystal Palace.
Well, I think whatever team they put forward, it's always going to be a challenge. I mean, Matt, we move on to Arsenal. Arsenal haven't beaten Chelsea at their other home, Meadow Park, for quite some time. Certainly with WSL, I think it dates back to, I want to say it was as far back as 2013. However, Emirates Stadium is a completely different kettle of fish. It's one of the few grounds I think we can say we're actually unbeaten against Chelsea. Won there 4-1 last season. We're trying to see, Matt. Lost Matt. I'm here, Rob.
I am here.
You are here. Sorry, mate.
See if the camera's decided to not been about.
Oh, there we go.
Sorry about that.
So that's fine. So last season we won 4-1, and it's become a bit of a happy hunting ground for Arsenal winning there. There was a 1-1 draw previous season, the 3-2. There's a few older games you go really back down through the dusty archives, but this has been a place where Arsenal have beaten Chelsea. Your thoughts going into this one, just generally, how confident are you for another win?
I don't think anyone's expecting sunshine and rainbows, to be honest. I think this one's going to be a tough watch, especially with us both being at Leicester. I think that was sort of the sort of decline that we've seen. The game against Everton, again, not great, and obviously with what happened to Bayern, that's just probably you're throwing grenades, basically. Verbal grenades, should I say? Now, with what the team is, I don't think the team are in great form. I don't think the team are going to be ready. I don't think that they'll be able to bounce back, and that is not a you go again sort of mentality that we've seen in the past. We've seen them in the past go on and lose games and then come back with that bounce back ability. I don't think we're seeing that at the moment, and that's what scares me the most, is the fact that this team is a shell of itself. That they keep on having the shots aren't coming when they're meant to be, and the opportunities they're taking or not taking when they should be taking them. It's just horrible, and this could be a game where it could be. A lot of fans have talked about this as potentially they don't want to come because they don't want to see this team be as poor as they have been in the past couple of weeks, and that is scary. Even if you're looking at this game usually is the blockbuster, the
best game of the season.
It's the one that promotes the WSL the most, I would probably say, because of the fact of that not only Chelsea being champions 4 in a row, it's a battle between two teams that the history of women's football and the present of women's football in Chelsea and Arsenal. It is a rivalry that is carry on building, but it just feels like just the way the Arsenal fans are at the moment. I think Rob can probably say this a bit more. Rob, the Chelsea fans are probably more anticipating of this and looking forward to this match than the Arsenal fans. The Arsenal fans are probably looking at this going, don't want to come off this and see Chelsea rock up at the Emirates.
I don't know. I think a lot of Chelsea fans are well wary of the similar situation that you came into a sort of similar situation last year when we came to the Emirates, of that Arsenal hadn't been in brilliant sparkling form and then won 4-1. To be honest, I think most Chelsea fans would take a draw from the Emirates, considering our awful record there and our pretty awful record away from home. Obviously, I think with both sides, we tend to perform better at our home stadiums in sort of recent years. I think most Chelsea fans would take a point, to be honest. And certainly, I'm in that bracket. I would happily go away and take a point. I think if they can go away and win, it's a big thing. I sort of said this yesterday on a different preview, but if you look at it from an Arsenal point of view, if they get the win tomorrow, I think that's 8 points from the opening 4. It's 2 wins and 2 draws, including a draw against Manchester City and a victory against Chelsea. That's not a bad return at all, even though they are both at home. And then from Chelsea's point of view, they're looking at it thinking, well, we've already lost the game. We've still got that game against United in hand, which is not going to be an easy match. And, you're already saying we're playing catch-up to Manchester City, assuming they win this weekend. In contrast, if Arsenal do lose it, you're looking at 5 points from 12. You're potentially already 7 points behind Chelsea or Manchester United. If both of them, one of them could win that game in hand, or, 5 points by Manchester City, assuming that they win at the weekend. And although I do think the WSL is going to be more competitive this year, and I think more points will be dropped, I don't think teams are going to quite, storm away with it as they have in the past. I still don't think we're at a stage where, every single team can beat every single team, like in the Premier League, where, I think every single week you're looking at it and you can't really necessarily predict, for example, what's going to happen.
It just feels weird a bit, Matt, because I remember the 4-1 game last season. I thought that moment it's clicked. And I thought that moment I was screaming, thinking, right now we got to win the league now to make this result mean anything. It's pretty clear it's working. It's pretty clear the players are all on board. It's pretty clear it's all systems go. We have got it working. Let's take this into the new year. And before we even got that far, we ended up losing the North London derby. And I think that defeat and the timing of that defeat just took away all of that momentum that you would have got from that result, because that's the kind of win. I think back to when, and I'm sorry about this, Rob, when we beat Chelsea 5-0 at Kingsmeadow, the momentum from that just took us through the rest of the season and Arsenal winning the league. Having lost immediately after that game, it's just we've never got that fire back. We've never got that. And I think that's probably going to be. I know we won the League Cup, but I think that result feels like at the moment that's like Jonas Eidevall's last great moment, if you will, certainly from a WSL perspective, because since then the drop off and the sort of deterioration, and especially going to this season, can he turn this around? Would a win now would that be like a springboard and it all clicks, or have we gone too far?
I think the worry has been is that they've overexerted themselves in games when they shouldn't. So they're qualifying for the Champions League, for example, going and scoring 7 past Rangers.
6. We've got 6.
Sorry. And Kate, then you look back at the numbers. Caitlin Ford scored 4 that day, and you think, right, okay, she's got to kick on. And since then, she's only got 2 assists. Yeah, she got Player of the Month. Not going to go into that sort of thing. No. But that's the sort of thing where you're thinking, you've just gone and scored 4 goals in the game. Can you be more consistent this season? And for whatever reason, it hasn't happened. And it's not just one player. It seems to be a few players, but there are some players that are performing really well. Leah Codner, for example, Frida Harton Mornham also doing really well. When she did score that 3 in a row, fortunately she couldn't make it 4, which would have probably been a better position to be in. But it's difficult to say where do the fans see if it's redeemable. I think for a lot of them it's too little too late.
I am getting the impression, and I've spoken to other people in the world of journalism, and they have said they think the fan base has gone. And I think you can see that online. I'm going to go into the press conference quickly because this is part of it. Spoke to the press earlier today on the Friday, as you do before the weekend matches, and a quote came out which caused a bit of a firestorm online. He was asked by Megan Humphrey. Megan said, "Some would say there's a bit of pressure on Arsenal at the moment. Whether there's anything to do, whether there's anything that you've got to say to some of the critics out there who've been criticising the performances of late." And I think we could say the criticism is warranted based on recent performances. Jonas, I think, has been a bit misconstrued in this quote, but the fact that he's being misconstrued says a lot. It's hard for me what to say to critics because I don't necessarily know what they're criticising. That aspect has really annoyed Arsenal fans. The rest of the quote goes on, but the most pressure comes from ourselves. Me personally, I set incredibly high standards on myself, and I think that I'm going to be by far the fiercest critic of my performances and the team's performances. But I think it shows a lot about the fan base is how quickly they were to pounce on the opening phrase, which spoken to, and it's been put as he's basically saying he can't respond to all the critics because he literally doesn't know what the critics say, so he can't respond to them what they say. But at the same time, I say you know what they're going to be saying. It should be pretty obvious, and it did feel a bit dismissive, and I think that's the way the fans have taken it. And the fact that there's nobody supporting him just sort of highlights that how quickly it's all fallen apart. Because there was a time when the fans did like Jonas. I mean, that's not he's not like he's always been disliked. He was certainly in the first few years, he was a very popular manager, especially when the results are good. But it looks like it's all gone.
It does, and I think this is a number of reasons why. I don't think it's just about how the team is playing at the moment. I think it's going to stem from what happened last season. Won't dwell on that too much, but I think everyone's decided it's too much. Everything has become too much, and that he can no longer go and be the manager that he is. If there is one thing that he's got to do, is he's got to make sure this team at least puts up a fight against Chelsea on tomorrow. If you're listening, it'll be on that Saturday at 12:30 kickoff. Making sure.
1:45.
It's 1:45.
Apologies.
In fairness, they kept moving this time around for stupid reasons. But yes, it's a 1:45 kickoff.
Last time I checked, it was a 12:30 kickoff. But either way, whenever it kicks off, from minute go, I just hope that team is ready to fire when pressing on the front foot, doing typical Jonas play, and just making sure to be as lethal as possible, making the right pressing at the right times, making sure that defensively solid. If we can get something where we've had a competitive game and say it ends up being like a 3-2 loss, I think fans can take that because they go, well, okay, you lost, but it was a good game.
I think back to the opening game of the season against Manchester City, a game that we should have won, and we didn't. And that game we made lots of chances, but we didn't take them. And it's which way does the needle fall? Does it become to lots of chances that we do take and we go on, or it goes to we stop making chances altogether? I fear that needle is moving slightly the wrong way at the moment towards the latter. But if we play like we did against Manchester City and we actually take opportunities, which sounds stupid, I know, in terms of how simple it sounds, then it can be a good game and it can be a win. But my worry is, as I've seen it so many times with managers, once it snowballs, it's very difficult to bring it back. And I think from a fan base perspective, I mean, I don't know if Rob, you from a Chelsea fan, from a men's perspective, certainly you've seen many managers come and go for the revolving door at Stamford Bridge. Once the fans have had enough, you don't win them back, do you?
No, I do think, as I said this to someone else, I think tomorrow's a sort of interesting game. I think if Arsenal, if they win it, even if they win it, I don't necessarily know how much of the fans will sort of will buy into the Eidevall method. And also, I think there's then a game against West Ham and then Vålerenga. Is it Vålerenga at home? I think?
And then West Ham away, and then it's the international break.
And then the international break. Suddenly, those two not only become must-wins, but they become must-wins and win well. And I think, obviously, you probably don't be reminding West Ham last year what happened.
Yes, and I think the fan base have sort of identified that as that's the buffers, if you will, at the end of the line. If the trajectory goes as one may think, if results don't go the way they want, and it ends up we're rocking up at Dagenham, and a similar thing happens to last season, and maybe even the season before. But as once it snowballs, you can't win fans back. Once that trust is broken, it's gone.
And I also do think, again, just on top of it, I think Arsenal have actually got quite a difficult task next week because Vålerenga are no mugs, as they showed against Juventus. They only lost, I think, 1-0 to Juventus at home. They look dogged. They look bad. And dare I say it, they look like the sort of team that could deploy a low block against Arsenal, which obviously, again, just from a sort of neutral point of view, I watched Arsenal's game last weekend. And by no means do I have any affiliation with Arsenal, obviously. But I was really confused why I was sat watching Catherine Cool sat on the bench, Rosa Kafaji sat on the bench, and I'm thinking both of these players. Cool, I think, is a really brilliant footballer, and I'm surprised she hasn't got more opportunities. Again, as I said in another podcast, I'm now just jinxing this ready for her to just slot tomorrow out of nowhere and produce a player of the match performance. But I don't really understand why she was playing. And Kafaji, by my understanding, this was exactly the sort of game she was signed for, to come on against, tight sitting defence and be that creative spark, or shoot from range, or, go past the player to actually make it happen.
This was the frustration we had. I mean, we discussed this on a previous pod, but when the changes came, it was two defenders and a defensive midfielder that came on, rather than some attacking changes. Now, Katrina Monaco, I can sort of understand, because she's been with a team for a while, but she hasn't really fully settled into the team. She's been out on loan. Jonas has insisted she's a really good player, but she's just waiting for them to develop. And it's starting to sound irritatingly more Mark Skinnerish towards, yes, we've got this really good player, but they just haven't settled into the team, and they're not really playing. And that moment, let's think, if Monaco doesn't play against Valerenga, then I don't know when she's going to play. Rosa Kafaji, everyone was saying, why didn't we throw her on? Why didn't we not put Rosa Kafaji on when we needed extra forwards and we needed a bit of imagination and creativity and chaos? Rosa Kafaji was that person. She came off the bench against Manchester City and helped it, triggered the scenario that gave us the Beth Mead equaliser. And I think that's another thing about the fans' trust, is when the fans are questioning your decisions and you think the fans are probably got a point here. Fans aren't idiots, and they're saying we may not have got a win against Everton if we subbed her on, but by not subbing her on, we definitely did not. I hope. Well, we'll move on to the team section on that note, Matt. I mean, Rose Kafaji, should she start this one, or is this going to be off the bench? Even if she does come off the bench, or are we going to use her at all?
I don't think she starts. I think she's going to be on the bench again. I don't think she's going to play this one, and that's only because I think she's going to be playing against Bavarian on Wednesday night.
So how do you think we'll line up then?
I expect Manny to go be in goal first and foremost. I think we'll see the usual of Kate McCabe and Emily Fox as fullbacks. I think Leah Williamson has to come in for this one, and I think Leah Godner has deserved her merits so far, so she's keeping up. Just on a side note, Amanda Illestech is actually bringing up her fitness. You can see on her Instagram, for those that are wondering, she's going out and runs every day now and things like that, in her Arsenal kit, shall we say, as well, which is great to see. I think we stick with. We will see Leah Volti and Kim Little in as the two pivots. I wouldn't be surprised if potentially Cara Cooney-Cross does come on either at half-time or later in the game. That then leaves who's going to go on the left and who's going to be on the right. Well, Mariona and Beth Mead, but might be a bit questionable at the moment because there seems to be confusion about that connection. Who's supposed to go into that attacking midfielder role? Yes. Frida has to start this one, if I'm being honest. And if Frida starts, I think Stina starts as well, because. But then again, Stina likes to come off the bench and score against Chelsea. So
she does. She's made a habit of that down the years. Many times. My feeling is that my concern is the middle two. Actually, is the Kim Little Leah Velty partnership, because it's been so good for us down the years. But I was saying to a friend before the game about this team selection for the Bayern Munich game, and I thought I can, go on for experience. I totally get that. Kim and Liv LT, I feel safe for that. But I just felt, one of the things I said was before the game kicked off, I thought, I'm worried about legs here. I'm worried that if Bayern have got the energy, I don't know if Kim Little and Liv LT have got the legs for 90 minutes running that double pivot. And I certainly felt in the second half when they kept running through our midfield. And I worry, and having had that really high intense game against Bayern Munich, putting the two of them again into the middle for the Chelsea game, I wouldn't be surprised if Cara started them. And the problem is we don't have Victoria Pelova available, so we can't swap both of them out. So one of them is going to have to play.
Just the alternative would be then you play a 4-5-1, but you don't have the attacking midfielder. You just have Frida playing as an additional centre.
You go more deep. Midfielder. Well, that would be a surprise. Or we might go back. You might do a back three. Mix it up a bit. He's experimented with that before, and maybe go around that way. I think it's. Well, the team sheet will come out. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes Frida in the midfield and Russo up top. And look, I'm a big Russo fan, but I just don't believe that Frida and Russo can work together, strike partnership. Jonas has persevered with this. It's another reason why some fans are, questioning the decisions. Rusa got a brace in this match last season. It was a very good moment. If she does that again, I'd be happy. But no, I'm concerned, Matt. I am concerned going into this one. I wish I'd more positive. I'm more positive, but I'm just seeing the way that the season is going and the trajectories of Jonas, and I'm whatever the result happens, I don't see any change potentially happening. I think this is probably Chelsea's best chance in a while to come to Emirates Stadium and get a win. And if that happened, I wouldn't be surprised. And I would fear if it did, what the noise would be, because I understand it's going to be a good crowd at Emirates Stadium, as it always is for this sort of game. And the players got to turn up and they've got to play for 90 minutes. And if they do that, give them something to be entertained about, then it could be fine. But I have my doubts. Before we close out, we'll do some score predictions. And as Rob, you're the guest, I'll get you to go first. I think you were saying you'd be happy with a draw against Chelsea?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time we big up these fixtures, don't we? And then they end up disappointing. So I could see it being a flat 1-1 tomorrow. A lot of effort and a lot of attrition, and neither side having enough to sort of to break the other one down.
Matt?
Well, last time I said 2-1 Bayern Munich, and look how that turned out.
Well, you predicted a win.
I predicted a win for Bayern, yeah.
Yeah.
This is generally how I feel. I do not see a way that if Arsenal win, it's going to be a 1-0 win. But if I'm being honest, I think Chelsea are a bit different to how they were in the Conti Cup final, and I think it's not going to be. I think it's going to be like a 2. I'll go 2-0 Chelsea. I don't think we're going to score at all.
I think we might score, because I think because Chelsea are going to come out of their shape and trying to come onto us, there'll be space to play in, and I think we'll be able to exploit that. But I just don't think we'll be able to sustain it for the. Well, firstly, I don't think we'll take the chances when they come, because that's probably against Manchester City, and I don't think we'll be able to sustain it any intensity we have for the 90 minutes. I just don't think the players can do it anymore under Jonas. I don't think so. I think it's going to be 3-1 to Chelsea. I think we might get a goal. I think second half, I think Chelsea will open up the taps. They've got the players on the bench, got like Aguilar Jones, Myra Ramirez, Lauren James. I could easily see them coming over, and then that was going to make things very uncomfortable. I wish I had something more positive to say. It's not often I predict an Arsenal defeat, but I have major concerns with the team at the moment, and until those concerns are dealt with, I will be forever worried. And on that positive note, we'll end the pod. But before we do, just a chance to tell everyone, where can we find you? Or Rob, where can we find you?
So you can find me at journalism_RP, and I'm also writing this season for DAZN Women's Football still, and at Sporting News.
Yes, I have read some of your stuff for Sporting News. It's been good stuff to read. And interesting, you don't just cover Chelsea, but you're covering other leagues around the world as well, which is great to see. Matt, where can we find you?
You can find me at MattLR28. You can also follow the pod at VAW Pod. And if you are looking for Lottie, that is Lottie_AWFC.
You can find me on Twitter and Threads and Instagram at Adam_Salter4. And if you want to enjoy some happier times as an Arsenal fan, when we used to beat Chelsea and win league titles, you can follow that at the AW Archive, the Arsenal Win Archive. Lots of Arsenal matches from way, way back, uploading daily. But that's it. It's the end of the pod. I wish I had something more positive to say. I hope Arsenal defy recent form and effort and well, what we think at the moment, and put on a show and remind everyone we can play good football and we can beat Chelsea, especially at Emirates Stadium, and maybe that will give us something to enjoy for the going into as the international break approaches. So yes, good luck everyone, best of luck Arsenal, and come on you Gunners.